Okay. Howdy, this is Stewart Dixon with Blue Collar Enlightenment, and I'm here with Brad Blanton, who's the author and founder of Radical Honesty. I live near Brad. I'm from Charlottesville, and Brad is up here in Stanley, Virginia. And I just here dropping by to say hello, to meet him, to get to know him, and to see what he's up to and what he's doing with his work and with his teaching. Before we start the interview, though, Brad wants to play a little song, and it's called The Road to Endarkenment. Enjoy.
Okay. All right. I've been in fights for civil rights so long I can't recall. And I held my nerve and refused to serve when I heard duty call. I sent money to Greece and I fought for peace and I stormed that Pentagon wall. Smoked dope all night with a draft card light and I really had a ball. But I'm tired of this road to enlightenment. I'm tired of trying to be free. I'm on the road to endarkenment. It's the only way for me. I'm looking for the tunnel at the end of the light to save me from saving me. Yes, I'm on this road to endarkenment. It's the only path for me. I have taken LSD since 1962. And I've been massaged and body rubbed and taught 10 ways to screw. And I learned to live in the moment, give or take a minute or two. And from pearls and girls and Sufi whirls, I learned just what to do. But I'm tired of this road to enlightenment. I'm tired of trying to be free. I'm on the road to endarkenment. It's the only path for me. I'm looking for the tunnel at the end of the light to save me from saving me. Yes, I'm on this road to endarkenment. It's the only path for me. Well, I have been in therapy since 1964. And I have been enlightened now about 10 times more. And I was saved for Jesus about 15 years before. And from Quest and Est and all the rest, I had everything in store. But I'm tired of this road to enlightenment. I'm tired of trying to be free. I'm on the road to endarkenment. It's the only way for me. I'm looking for the tunnel at the end of the light to save me from saving me. Yes, I'm on this road to endarkenment. It's the only path for me. Tweedledee.
That's great.
I thought you'd like that.
It's perfect. It's so perfect. I have a term that I use called inhumanness. And there's a school that I mentioned earlier called Waking Down.
Yeah, yeah.
And I call what I teach blue collar enlightenment as a way to basically slap the word enlightenment in the face.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is exactly what that's exactly how you teach, I presume. This is a perfect song for that. Yeah, it's very beautiful. You should how come you aren't on a stage in front of thousands of people, Brad?
I can't play the guitar with this shit.
Even if you can play the guitar, there's no guarantee. Worth a shit doesn't mean you're going on a stage in front of
That's
thousands
right.
of people. I'm speaking about myself there.
Okay.
Well, so where to begin? I'll be honest. Of course, I have to be because I'm with the king of radical honesty here. I don't know Brad. This is the longest that we've interacted. I've been at his home now for about a half an hour, and we've been talking. We've had a few email exchanges, and I showed up here sort of out of the blue, maybe a couple of weeks ago. But he was busy with his course that he's offering online right now, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I don't know him very well. I have read his can I call it an autobiography? I suppose so. It's called A New Kind of Trailer Trash. It's a great book and it really gives a nitty-gritty, no-holds-bar explanation and biography of his life and what he went through and how he got to be the human being that he is today. And it is, as he just sang, a beautiful ode to the road of endarkenment as well, which I think is really the only real road to travel in many ways. So my interview here with Brad is also going to be an exploration of who he is today and what is going on in his world. And I will be getting to know him as you will be getting to know him if you've never heard of Brad Blanton before in this interview as well. His autobiography, Brad, did you say 74? Is that correct?
I'm 74 years old.
74. So his autobiography in the book that I just mentioned, A New Kind of Trailer Trash, goes till 37. Is that correct? So about age 37. So there's a time period of about 40 years since then to now that I have, no idea what Brad's been up to.
Actually, it's 37 and 37. It's exactly 37 years ago.
It's actually 37 years ago. Correct.
Yeah.
So I really would, I guess that might be my first question is, because in your autobiography, you had not gotten to your, can I call it your breakthrough book, right? Radical Honesty, or what would you? I
hadn't written that book by then. I was running a private practice of therapy in D.C., but I was out of that practice that years later. I wrote that book when I was about 50.
You wrote it when you were 50,
and published it when I was about 54.
Right. So then I presume after that, your teaching took on a whole other scale.
It did.
I'm wrong.
I sort of stopped making my living in a private practice and started doing seminars and writing books.
Right, right. So this is what is not in the autobiography that I haven't read. So I'm really curious as to what were your influences around that time. Let's say from the age 50 to now. Who were you in? If you could cite influences, who were you influenced by now, and how, if at all, or significantly, has your life changed direction or changed since you were 37? It's not a trick question.
Yeah, I know. Well, there were a couple of kids that came after that, and another marriage after that. I was married for 22 and a half years to Amy, who I just gotten married to then in 37, when I was 37. So
right.
For the next 22 and a half years, Amy and I were together. We moved out here to the country and built a house. Basically, I lived my life according to John Prine's song.
Yeah. What song would that be?
Actually, he blew up your TV.
Yeah.
And moved to the country.
Yeah.
Oh, what is that title? I can't remember that. But anyway, I listened to that song, and so I did. We blew up our TV. We moved to the country and built us a home. Had a lot of children, raised them on peaches, and they all found Jesus on their own.
Okay. That's still quoting the song.
Yeah. So let's see. I was in private practice in Washington, D.C. as a clinical psychologist. I also had done the forum and I carried the beeper for the forum, the back of the trainings that were.
What is the forum?
The forum was a training developed. There was the EST training, which was developed by Werner Earhart, and then the second version that was the forum.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And then basically, I was a Gestalt therapist, and I basically had a clientele in Washington, D.C. I ran a private practice called the Center for Wellbeing. I had a number of other therapists and massage people and various kinds of people working at that clinic.
You were heavily influenced by Fritz Perls, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with
Fritz Perls was basically one of my main teachers.
Yeah.
I went and studied with him in about 1970, and with a lot of people that studied with him.
Mm-hmm. Could you categorize his work as also as transpersonal psychology? Would that be transpersonal psychology?
He would never have agreed to that.
Oh, okay. Because I mean that implies there's something beyond the personal. In other words, right?
Well, yeah. He would say that he was a strange guy. He was real good friends with the guy who was the director of Tassajara, which is the Zen center that was the most popular in California. And I was over there some too.
Yeah.
And so he was friends with the director of the center, but whenever he talked about Zen Buddhism, he would say Zen Buddhism way to neither shit nor get off the pot. That's all he had to say about Zen Buddhism.
Right.
but they were good friends and buddies. And
yeah.
He got Rolfed by Ida Rolf, and they were good friends. And when they asked him what he thought about Rolfing, he said, "Oh, there's nothing to it, but it freed him up in his body and made him feel younger, did all these nice things."
Right.
But he was kind of a critical, grumpy old guy.
Yeah.
And I got along with him well because I called him, I saw him as a senile old bastard. I wouldn't obey anything that was said. He said, "Good."
Yeah. I had the impression that there would be nothing between the interaction between you and he would be nothing but raw-edged, real truth. No matter how
there was
acidic.
A lot of laughter there though as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But we would also tell each other to kiss our asses.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And it was fun learning from him. He had me over to his house at Esalen and stuff like that. It's like basically I was one of the picks.
Yeah.
That he liked, that he thought was the future of Gestalt therapy.
Now that was during your what, 30s, early 30s?
Yeah, it was about 1970. I was 30 years old in 70, and then basically for the next, I'd say 4 or 5 years, I was learning from and co-leading with and running Gestalt therapy groups with other Gestalt therapists. Fritz died in 75, I think. So.
Right. And then after that, were there any other therapists or teachers or gurus or pundits that you gravitated towards in the latter half, or was that?
I always loved Ram Dass, and whenever he'd come to the States and come to Washington D.C., I would go and see him, and we joked, and we were not like buddies or something, but he recognized me and I recognized him as someone who's kept up with what he did.
Yeah, I met Ram Dass one time at Omega Institute.
Mm-hmm.
He was wheelchair bound at the time, and he was outside. He was about to give a big presentation to a whole bunch of people. But before his presentation, he decided, for whatever reason, that he had to have a smoke on the back deck, which is where I was sitting. So yeah, I didn't smoke a cigarette with him, but I should have. But that
might not have been a cigarette either.
This is true. This is true. So could you say then more, I mean, I know that I arrived to a point in my life when I was, let me see, I'm 45 and this is 14, so I was like 41 when I just said, man, I'm just done. I can't tolerate another teacher, another teaching, another spiritual group, etc. Did you arrive to such a point maybe around the same age or around the same time and you said, yeah, I'm here and I'm happy and this is it? Did you feel like you maybe bumped into that?
I felt like, from running my private practice and having a kind of a following and beginning to write some things and doing some weekend workshops and stuff, that I was basically becoming the guru I was seeking, in the sense that I knew that the job is for me to get over myself. And anybody new comes along that wants to help with that, I'm open to it. But generally, I already know a lot about that now. And so I wasn't, I always say there's a seeker born every minute.
Yeah, right.
And basically, so I'm not much of a seeker, although, basically, I'll take what anybody's got to offer.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of wisdom emerging from a lot of people all the time, constantly.
Yeah.
And I feel like the people that are my clients in workshop redemption, the members and the people that are in the online workshop now, it's 130 people.
Yeah.
They're writing like 30 pages a day back and forth to each other, and some of it is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And they're taking risks in their real lives, talking to their parents, talking to their exes, talking to their wives and husbands.
Yeah.
If they're older, talking to their kids and stuff like that. And finally, venturing forth into getting over some stuff they've just been lying and hiding about.
Yeah.
And when they do it and they describe it, and the elation that they get out of it is like magnetic and moving. And I read, I'm sitting here reading and crying every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moved to tears by what people have taken the risk to do.
Right.
They've done.
So Brad is talking about an online course that he's putting on right now, that he just began a few weeks ago. That is the first. This is correct. Yes, this is the first online course that you've offered.
This is the first time around. We're going to do it for. It's called Radical Honesty: How to Get Over Shit and Be Happy.
This is why I'm here interviewing Brad, because anybody who used that number of, I'm going to use the fancy word here, invective. Invective. Have you ever heard that word, invective? It's a fancy word for saying shit and fuck and damn and hell. So yeah, I mean, I as a potty mouth teacher myself, I really super appreciate someone who can name a workshop how to get, how to get over shit and be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, there it is. Endarkenment, how to get over shit. Just, I think the age of coddling and of this new age pansy lotus flower floating in the clouds and breathy voices in air is just freaking over. It's just over. Can we just get real about this and say that teachers are real too, and they got problems and issues and this whole complexity to their lives as well, and are not perfect beings. But at the same time, here's the paradox that there's a realization of a beautiful noticer. I'm going to use your words, right? Of a beautiful clarity, of a beautiful emptiness that isn't necessarily the end-all, be-all to life, and it's going to make your life perfect, but certainly makes you and gives you this sense of getting over shit. Getting over it and living your life here and now. And that's what's so beautiful, I think, about Brad and his work, is that he's exemplifying living that. And from what I gather from the book that I've read and from my short time interacting with him, this is what you get. This is how he's been his whole life, and I really say kudos to that. I think that's really great. So I want to make sure that anybody who's watching this video, this is one thing that I guess I'm learning myself, is that we acknowledge where they're coming from, because not everybody is going to. Most of the time, you got to imagine people online, they're surfing around, looking at videos, they're looking at teachers, they're reading this and that and the other thing. They're unhappy. They're suffering. They're feeling this sense of something missing, and this sense of loneliness or separation. They're not over their shit. And so maybe you could address from that level of like, here's some, I just found this website, All Things Healing, or my website, or Brad's website, because I'm going to give you a link to this video to put on your website. What do you say to those people, when they first bump into you? Boy, I've been suffering my whole life. What is the first kind of initial exchange that you would have with them?
Well, I'd say the first thing is that you've been raised in a culture that taught you that your mind was a very valuable thing, and that was a mistake. That your mind is not the most valuable resource you have. In fact, it's basically a bullshit generating machine, and it's the source of your alienation from other people. It's the source of your loneliness. The source of your loneliness is the evaluations and assessments and judgments and standards of your mind that you or the world don't live up to your satisfaction. And that's the source of all your anger and all of your hurt, is that it's some kind of mistaken identity. You think that who you are is your performance. You were raised in a culture where you were taught all your life that who you are is the grades you make, what the teacher thinks of you, what your peers think of you, and what the general assessment by people might think of you, what kind of job you have, how much money you earn, how polite and nice you are, how you look, how you dress. Who you are is what other people think about you. And that, unfortunately, is not who you are. In fact, it's not even very important. And if who you are is just someone sitting there looking at a goddamn TV screen right now, that's who you are. You're that person sitting there looking right now, listening to the noise coming out of my mouth and making meaning out of the words that I'm speaking. That's your fundamental, important identity. And all that other stuff is secondary bullshit that your culture has sold you so they can get you to go and die uselessly for some goddamn stupid war. So basically, you didn't cop to getting killed, apparently, although you may be a veteran, damaged to the core with your whole fucking life for nothing. But you are still here, and you're present, and your being is here, and your identity of yourself as a being is just fine, because it's enough. It's enough. Being here and being present and being willing and being open is the key to intimacy with other people, and being happy in the world and helping other people out, and doing things that actually work to bring about a little bit of joy and relief and fun in life. And all that bullshit about who you are is your reputation or what you imagine someone else is imagining about you. That's just bullshit on top of bullshit.
Perfect.
That's the starting place.
Yeah, yeah. I know in my own case, my sense of separation, unhappiness, and depression was healed by this of coming back here, of not dying to the mind, not having some sort of transcendental ego death, but more or less having be the pilot and mind, ego, being the co-pilot. And it wasn't until those two things flipped for me that I was able to have a sense of peace, a sense of wholeness, a sense of equanimity. Now, I want to say this, I want to clarify this, and I think you would agree with me here, and that this is on an existential level. On a surface level, I can still be a grumpy son of a bitch, and I think Brad would own up to that as well.
No, I'm always perfect.
You're always perfect. Brad's always perfect. That means he's always a grumpy son of a bitch. So I'm speaking for me right now. On a surface level, there can be the waves. The waves come and go, and some days are better than others. Some days, I'm getting along with my wife and my kid, and some days I'm not. And some days I have low energy, some days I have high. But on an existential level, on a level where like someone asks me, "Hey, how you doing today, Jeff?" I stop, feel my body. I'm like, I feel good, thank you. I'm great, thank you. So on an existential level, I can answer that question honestly. I can answer that question honestly. There's a sense of peace. So this is what I hear, what you're talking about, the same thing, that this recognizing the bullshit of the mind, the bullshit of the left brain, so to speak, and then having those two things flip is sort of, this is what happened for me, and I found that to be a very key ingredient.
Well,
so
that thing, what happens is that you still have a mind, you still generate all the stuff you did, but you recognize it for what it is. It's a toy.
Right.
Yeah. It's just something to play with. You have a choice. You can either do this or you can do this.
That's so true. God, that's right.
And if you're doing this, it's not much different than doing that. You try doing both at the same time, even that gets too complicated to
Yeah,
handle.
boy, that's well put. So let me think here. Um, in your school, in Radical Honesty, in this online workshop that you're doing, I want to do this too. I want to have an advertisement right now. Your website, what's your website? If you could.
RadicalHonesty.com.
Okay,
And
Radical
if you
Honesty.
want to find out about the workshop, it's called RadicalHonestyWorkshop.com. And basically, the book he referred to earlier is called Some New Kind of Trailer Trash.
Sorry about that.
Some New Kind of Trailer Trash, because it's a kind of expression, some kind of new kind of trailer trash. And that it's all right. What I want is if you get the lead, you go in there with the S instead of the A, because you won't find it under A. And basically, all of my work is about this idea of getting to this place of actually loving your mind as a toy, rather than constantly like defending against its assessments and its aberrations, and just saying, "Oh yes, my mind is just happily going along generating bullshit, and I just look at it and report some of it every now and then." But who I am is not that.
Yeah.
Who I am is the one who has that, rather than that having me.
Yeah.
So you lose your mind and come to your senses, and then you get your mind back. But you get it back as a toy, not as something very significant. It's fun to play with. I still like writing books, but I write them from the position of being centered in my experience.
Yeah, perfect. I will sometimes say, I refer to my mind as my retarded kid brother.
Yeah.
And sometimes my retarded kid brother's like right next to me, and I'm like, can you just shut the fuck up? Can you just give me a break? Really? Can you just really? What are you doing? You know. And at other times, he's playing by himself over in the corner. He's peaceful. He's okay. But I'm not trying to get rid of my retarded kid brother. I'm not at war with my retarded kid brother. I'm comfortably, totally accepted and love my retarded kid brother, and I see the poor little guy for the limitation that he is. And I'm okay with that. And I think that's what endarkenment is about, what inhumanment is about, what radical honesty is about, is really of living with that grace, living with that quality, and not in a way, correct, let's see if we're on par here too, Brad, but not in a way where there's any effort, right? Right?
Now and then you might use some effort, but it's a choice. It's not a compulsion. You don't have to.
Right.
It's not an effortful thing. See, once you lighten up about enlightenment, then you're lightened up about enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, oh, well, that was an enlightened moment, and this one I had my head up my ass.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works.
I love that, because I think we get, I think that we all, I know that this is true of myself, where we those of us who have watched all of the prerequisite enlightenment videos with teachers who are speaking in front of 300 people, we get the impression that that once enlightenment is attained or awakening is had, that you now have this sense of perfect equanimity about the way that you manifest that awakening. And just like what Brad said here, but it's not that way. It isn't that way. Sometimes you're just an idiot, you know. Sometimes it just doesn't. Sometimes things come out of your mouth. Even I don't care who you are, you know, the Dalai Lama. Shit's going to come out of your mouth that isn't always enlightened language. That isn't always politically correct. That isn't always having your most heartfelt, compassionate. Yeah, it's just impossible. I don't know about you, but you know, it just does not happen that way.
Yeah, for me, it's more for the amusement. Like when you meet the Dalai Lama, you're supposed to say, "Hello, Dalai."
It's called killing the Buddha in the road.
And I think that, you know, it's not, when you wake up in the morning, you're awakening, but you don't get so excited about it. Oh my God, I woke up. You say, okay, now I'm awake. And then when you go to sleep at night, you don't say, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to fall asleep again and not be awake anymore."
Right.
Well, you don't. Well, the idea is just like, well, when you're awake, be awake, and when you're asleep, be asleep.
Yeah.
And being awake about being asleep means, okay, fine, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep a while. Maybe you need a little break from enlightenment. You know, I've been enlightened for an hour and a half now. I need to do something to bring me down.
Here's, I bet Brad and I will fist bump on this one. So I teach every 2 weeks in Charlottesville. I go to this church, and we have a 2-hour little meeting about awakening. And I was asked, what do I do to debrief or to kind of come down off of that? And my to this day, I will go home and watch. This is after teaching compassion and spiritual awakening, right? Okay, so I go home and watch The Walking Dead. Or I will play my Xbox and play some violent video game, or drink a beer, or do something that has zero to do with what you think this
is supposed to be
spiritual, right?
Yeah, right.
How about you, Brad? After a workshop, what's your what is your go-to?
I usually like to go out and eat a good meal and have a couple of beers and listen to music or something like that.
Yeah.
Or hang out with the people from the workshop and just keep on playing.
Yeah.
Because basically the end of my workshop is most of the people laughing a lot.
Yeah, that's great. That's really awesome. You had I commented on one of your videos for this course. Well, you said something in the workshop like, well, looks like this was a successful exercise. We can end it here. Let's all go get drunk.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
One might think that that's a paradox. One might like, well, if you're awake or you know who you are, you're happy. Why would you want to get drunk? Why would you want to drink? Why would you want to smoke or do anything or Well, I guess my
to avoid people with those kind of questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
My answer to that. You want to know tequila with that? Maybe have a few more shots of tequila, and then you'll understand. Because that question comes from right here.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, I'll let you. I think we're close to the. I only do these at half an hour.
Okay.
I figure that that's a really sweet amount of time. It's not too much, not too little. So I think we're kind of right at that end point. I'm gonna beautiful interview. It was really nice hanging out.
Thank you.
I'm gonna let you. Anything else that you want to add or say to the again? These are who knows if they've met you or know you or anything. Any parting words that you would want to wish for people?
Well, I ran this 8-day-long workshop for about 20 years, about, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 times a year with 16 people at a time. It was a residential workshop. And it was called the Radical Honesty Workshop. And after maybe about 10 years of running that workshop, we finally came up with a chant that always leads to enlightenment 100% of the time within 10 minutes. And I usually sell this for like about $3,000, so I'm giving it to you guys for free. And I'm going to give you the chant that without fail always leads to enlightenment. Without fail. This is it. If you do that, if you slobber, you get there in a minute and a half. And what happens is you just get dumber than a stick. You get dumber than a box of hammers. Like that. And whoever you look at and talk to, whatever you say, where it goes on, you're just, that's it. That's enlightenment. Thanks. I enjoyed it.
That was perfect, Brad. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, sir. All right. Thank you all. Come back again sometime, and we'll be handing out free tequila.
Okay.